You were quite naive, weren't you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, seriously naive. Yeah.
Because it's like a kid is like trying to take on the world with like his own music publishing company, which fails in the car park loo. And then he
Yeah.
goes from there to, I'm going to start my own record label at what, 20, 26, 25 years old?
Mm,
So you start this record label. Is that Fanfare Records?
yeah. So I met Sunita in this club, the Embassy Club, which is a brilliant nightclub. Um, I liked her. She liked me. And I said, oh, I run my own record label.
Nice.
And I thought it's a great pickup line. And she said, oh, I'm an artist. I went, really? I said, have you made any demos? And she said, yeah. So I said, well, can we meet again? And we did meet again. And she did play me some demos. And I said, actually, you've got a really, really good recording voice. And at the time, there was this particular kind of sound, dance music, which was really becoming popular. You know, it was all originating from, I think, the French part of Canada, where a lot of these records were originally made. They were all breaking out of gay clubs across the UK. And I just had this idea for Sunita, which was, she was so beautiful, so much fun. And I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a record with her and I'm going to break it through the clubs across the UK. And I just had this crazy idea in my head for a title. And I said to this guy I met, he hadn't had a hit before, this is Sunita, blah, 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 blah. I want a record. This is how I think I'm going to break it. I want it to be called So Macho. And he looked at me like, right. So we made two records. One was called So Macho. The other one was called, God, you've got it. Is the other side Cruising?
This is the record.
That's it. Oh my God, that's a great sleep, by the way.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's right. So Macho and Cruising. The problem is the guy I was working with says to me, I'm expanding into book publishing. I'm like, okay, fine. So he didn't really take any notice of what I was doing. And then he said to me, I've been a public company, basically wants to buy my business, blah, 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 blah. Great. I'm shutting down the record label. I'm like, are you kidding? I've just made this record. I think it's going to be a hit. And he went, no, I'm shutting it down. And I said, and what does that mean for me? He said, well, you're out of a job. And I said, look, I know you've made a lot of money. You're probably going to make a ton more. Do me a favor. Would you just give me £5,000? I don't want a salary, but with that money, I will make the video. I'll get it distributed, blah, 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 recorded, video, everything. And he went, let me think about it. And I kept calling him over the weekend. And eventually he said, okay, fine, 5,000 and that's it. So I thought, okay, that I think should be enough. And that was, I suppose one of the biggest turning points in my life. If he had said no at that point, I'm not sure what I would have done.
What would you have done?
I would have hustled it from somewhere. Because I really did believe in this. The minute I heard the record I just thought, this is going to be a hit.
How'd you know?
I just felt it. I had a good, the funny thing is when I actually made my first record, the producer said, do you want to come down to the studio? And I said, no. And he said, why? I said, because I don't want to know how a record is made. He said, why? He said, because I want to listen to it as anybody who buys records. If I know how a record's made, it's going to sound different to me. So to this day, I don't know how a record is actually made. I don't know how it started. Does someone play a bass line or a keyboard? I mean, I literally haven't got a clue.
That's so strange.
Because I know it would be it's like when people do magic on my shows. I'm not the person who goes, I know how you did that. I go, I believe in magic. And I will literally make myself believe in magic. And with music, it was sort of the same thing, which is I don't want to know too much. I don't want to pretend that I can read music, because I can't. I don't want to make myself believe that I can be a producer, because I probably couldn't be a very good producer. But I think I could be a very good A&R person, which is find an artist, find them the right song, and then, break the record. And it took me about 1.5 years to break that record. It was tough.
I just want to pause on that, what you said there about not knowing anything about music or how a record is made. What I heard there, I guess in between the lines, is you want to remain the listener and not the creator, because you think it's more valuable to maintain the perspective of the consumer.
Completely. 100% that. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. This is exactly that. And also, I didn't want to ever, because I'd met some successful producers, over the years, and I had this vision of, because I heard stories of A&R people who went into studios pretending they understood how to make a record and hadn't got a clue. In fact, one guy actually had literally a piece of metal, like a train track or something, literally a piece of iron, and he had it on his studio wall, and he called it the whackometer, because all these idiot A&R guys used to come in, I don't really like the mix of the record, and he'd go, I know exactly what you mean. Let me just adjust this. And so he would just pull the lever down, and the guys would go, night and day. And I couldn't think of anything more embarrassing. So I've always been the first to say, I don't know how a record's made. I can't read music. Haven't really got a clue. But I think I do have a good ear for a hit or a potential hit.
There's something really transferable to marketing. I've obviously spent the last 10 years working in marketing, and one of the most passionate things I've said on stage a gazillion times to my teams is trying to get us out of the perspective of the creator and into the perspective of the person that's going to see it out in the world. And I have to say, it is like an impossible task.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple.
Yeah.
And what you're describing is what I've fought so hard to try and convey to people.
Well, I think you can do that if you believe it yourself. And I did have this strong belief in myself that finally I'd found something I could do, which was make a record, make a terrible video. Because obviously we used to have to physically manufacture the records. So I didn't have a lot of credit. So I had to do a lot of deals, with these people. Look, I'll pay you if you'll make me 10,000 was the minimum or something. I mean, the whole thing, what I had to go through to get this record into the charts. And it was all about getting it into the top 40. And it took me 3 times. First time it flopped, second time it flopped. And then what I did was I said to the warehouse, I said, what is the problem? They said, well, the record's selling, but it's not, it keeps selling, Simon, but it's not enough to get it into the 40. So I said, well, why don't we hold the order? And they said, well, we're not really supposed to do that.
What does that mean?
In other words, just say it's out of stock on the computer, but it's not out of stock. Just don't let them have the record when they order it. In other words, let's build up the back orders. So we built up whatever the back order was, and then all the people who'd ordered a record 3 months ago, 4 months ago, suddenly all these records arrived that week. And it worked. It got the record into the top 40. It squeezed in, and I got a breaker on Top of the Pops, and the record just exploded after that.
Because of circumstances heavily outside of your control, Fanfare Records collapses,
Yeah.
owing the bank $500,000, and you're left with about £5 in your pocket, and you move back in with your parents at 30 years old, my age.
Well, it wasn't the label that owed the money. It was me. Um, because all of us were encouraged to buy shares in this company because we were told the company was doing really, really well. So the bank manager was practically forcing me to borrow money, because he said the shares are going to go up in value. And at the same time, I thought everything was just going to be wonderful. So I bought a house. I bought a Porsche, of course. I had a gold credit card, which no one explained to me how that works in terms of the interest rates. So I'm living it up. And when it all came crashing down, I owed the bank nearly £500,000. So I had to go in and see the bank, and they had the nice guy and they had the not so nice guy. And the not so nice guy was, okay, where's the money? Right. Well, you lent it to me, where it's just gone. And the other guy was like, yeah, well, it was partly our fault and blah, 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 blah. So I said, look, all I can tell you is, if you bankrupt me, I don't care. Because I don't have anything. I don't have a job. I don't have any income. I've just got this debt.
Porsche? What about the Porsche? What about the Porsche?
It all went, the whole lot. Even when I sold the house, I still owed money on the mortgage. So I was on paper bankrupt, yes. So I moved back in with my mum and dad, and that was really told me what great people they were, because there wasn't one moment where either of them said, you failed or this or that. It was like, it's a life lesson, Simon, and you'll get over it. And I managed to find a bank, amazingly, to lend me, because I negotiated the debt down. We worked out what the interest was over the period of time, what the capital sum was, and then I got them to half that, and I said, somehow I'll pay it back to you. So I found another bank who just backed me. I just sold myself. And I said, look, my first record I ever made went to number 2, whatever it was in the chart, sold 1 million copies. This is what my career is going to be. What happened was out of my control. And he said, I don't know, I've got a feeling about you. I'm prepared to lend you some money to pay back the other bank, which meant I didn't become bankrupt. So I went back to live with my mum and dad, and it was actually quite an interesting time, because I remember, and I've told this story a lot, is that I had to get from a particular destination in the West End to where my parents lived, and I had about £5 cash. And I remember thinking, it's literally all the money I've got left in the world. And I'm not sure the £5's going to cover the taxi ride home. And I think, we just about made it. Yeah. And I said, I'm sorry about the tip, because I haven't got any more money. It was about 10p or something. Fortunately, I had a very, very good lawyer, a guy called Tony Russell. And I said to Tony, look, I'm not in a great place. I'd met him actually because he represented George Michael, and he sued me when I'd made a mega mix of, which we used to do. We used to literally get in session singers and say Kylie Minogue, just record 8 Kylie Minogue records with someone who sounded like Kylie Minogue, mix them. So we used to call them mega mixes. Mm-hmm. And they'd sell about 10, 20,000 copies. We used to export them all over the world. I did a Wham one. We got sued by George Michael. That's how I met my lawyer, because he was representing George. And I said, I'd rather you represent me next time. And he was brilliant, because he said, look, I think, Simon, weirdly, what's happened to you is the best thing that's ever happened. And I said, why? I said, I'm broke. I don't have a job. He said, but you succeeded so far, Simon, with everything you put out. Because I had had, success with some other records along the way. He said, I think you should get a label deal, which means that you own part of the company with a major label. So I'm like, okay, if you can get me one, brilliant. And we went to meet two companies on the same day, BMG and Universal. And literally that day, at the end of the day, Tony called me. He said, I've had two calls. I went, go on. Universal had said no. I'm like, shit. BMG had said yes. I'm like, seriously? There's a caveat. You've got 1 year, and within that 1 year, you've got to sell X amount of records. And I'm like, I'll do it. And I did. And that was kind of how I got myself back up and running again. By the way, the other thing I should mention is I said to Tony, by the way, I don't have any money to pay you.
The lawyer.
The lawyer. I said, so, I'm not sure I can afford you. And he said, well, I believe in you, Simon. I think one day you will end up repaying me. And I'll always remember that. And years later, of course, we did a lot of deals together, and of course I repaid him. But I mean, the fact that he was there for me at that moment, I mean, that was, again, a life-changing moment for me.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.